Welcome back to another episode of the Checkerboard Chat. We're here our first Monday after spring break. A lot of stuff happened over break in UT sports world. Most notably, as you know, Tennessee basketball eliminated once again in the first weekend of the SEC tournament. But we're here back in the swing of things. How's everybody doing today? I'm joined by Ethan, Andrew, and Riley, of course.
I'm good. It's early in the morning, but I'm good.
Doing good. Still getting over a long 4 days of basketball. I'm back out at school. We're trying to push P as much as possible, so we're doing good.
Not as much.
Yeah, doing as well as you can after a weekend like we had and the Monday after spring break.
So yeah.
After a weekend, really a week, 2 weeks in a row of doing full-time sports reporting.
Yeah.
It's tough to
It's basketball hangover at its finest right now.
I was trying to do homework. I was trying to do homework yesterday, and it was miserable.
Yeah, I forgot what it's like to be a student.
Yeah.
This week.
I'll admit that, but I think there needed to be more basketball personally.
I can agree with you.
Oh my gosh.
This guy.
They need to up it a little bit.
Go up to like 104 teams.
Let's do 128. Why not?
68 more.
108, I guess.
This tournament's already pushing me to the limit right now. I can't even imagine doubling it. But anyways, as miserable as I am this morning, I know there's at least one team that's a little more miserable than me, and that's of course Tennessee. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned, they were number 3 seed in the tournament. Went to Indianapolis, beat up on Longwood in the first round. They were looking really good, hitting their shots, making threes. Match up against Michigan in the second round, and it wasn't close. I mean, Tennessee was missing shots. I think that's the difference, and we'll talk about it get into a little more. Mm-hmm. But between that and Hunter Dickinson inside, Michigan knocked out Tennessee in the first weekend.
If you want to make it simple, it was Tennessee couldn't contain Hunter Dickinson. Mm-hmm. If you want to make it even more simple, it was that Tennessee just didn't hit shots when it mattered. There are a lot of teams this week that went out exactly like that. I know Illinois couldn't hit a shot when it mattered. I know Wisconsin couldn't hit a shot when it mattered. Wisconsin was probably even worse than Tennessee, but Tennessee was up there with that group. I mean, 6 minutes, what was it, like 8 minutes left, up 6 with the ball, and you're thinking, okay, Tennessee could just coast at this point, just ride Kennedy Chandler, and then they just took Kennedy Chandler away. They forced somebody else to do it, which was perfect by Michigan. I mean, They switched it up pretty much the entire game. At first it was Vescovi, and then Kennedy kind of got hot a little bit, and then at the end they just did not allow Kennedy to score, and when he had open looks, he couldn't score, and it wasn't just him, it was everybody on the team. And I mean, I won't keep rambling about it, but it's what we've been talking about all season. It's that, you go on those 5-minute scoring lulls, and then you just act like everything's okay. Yeah. I think I saw something on Twitter that was like, someone said, was it Einstein that said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? Yeah. That's just, I'm not saying Rick Barnes is insane, but I'm saying, I guess Tennessee fans are insane for thinking that was actually going to be sustainable. So
yeah, I mean, you got to give props to Michigan. They had a game plan going into it, and they lived and died by it, and it worked. I mean, they took away the perimeter, no threes. I mean, obviously 2 for 18, something worked, and they dared Tennessee to beat them by making 2s. Yep. And it worked for maybe 2/3 of the game. Mm-hmm. The final third or whatever, fourth, whatever it might have been, they shut it down. Like you said, shut down Chandler. He had easy drives for most of the second half until, like you said, that 8-minute stretch on, had nothing. Yep. And also going in the second half, it was evident they were going to live and die by Hunter Dickinson also. Yeah. I mean, they went at him for the first, 3-4 possessions, and he made easy buckets. What do you have, 27 points and 11, 13 rebounds, something stupid?
11 rebounds.
He had, I believe, 9 straight points to start the second half.
And I will say this, too. If he's making threes, you just tip your cap to him.
Hunter Dickinson had more threes than Tennessee as a team. Yeah. Hunter Dickinson is a 7'1" forward. And he had more threes than Tennessee as a team.
That's insane. Yeah. I mean, the fact that he is a pro prospect through and through. He's a great inside presence. But like I said, if he's making threes of that magnitude, you just got to tip your cap.
He's like a 32% three-point shooter. It's not great, but for a 7'1", it's
that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's a threat you got to respect, and obviously Tennessee didn't respect it, and he made them. Yeah. So, like you said, threes didn't go in, costing them, couldn't stop him, and down the stretch couldn't make shots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and props to Michigan in a lot of ways, Hunter Dickinson for sure, and they just made adjustments when it mattered. Yeah. Late in the game, like we said, when Tennessee was up 6 with the ball, I mean, they did exactly what they needed to do, and they figured it out. They made the right adjustments. They executed. I mean, it was a pretty flawless performance from them. And then, on our end, on Tennessee's end, there were just a lot of just little mistakes that just killed you.
Yeah.
I think right after we were up, Tennessee was up 6 with the ball. You come down on the other end. Euros, actually, this was a different point. Euros had just hit a shot, comes down on the other end. I almost called him Walker Kessler. Hunter Dickinson wide open in the paint layup. Stuff like that just killed.
It was over Euros too. I remember the exact one you're talking.
Well,
about.
he did the little small thing.
Yeah, the very next play.
He
couldn't get
caught.
Yeah. Dickinson was just clowning DT the entire time.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but
I mean,
he was.
The Big Ten is just clowning Tennessee in general.
It's perfectly fair because I mean he was just the best player on the court. Kennedy Chandler made a legitimate effort to just do it by himself.
Yes.
And that was really cool to see that. I almost thought he was going to do it at first because he was the only one really. Like Josiah Jordan-James, he played well in the first half. He kind of disappeared after that, just a little bit. And Kennedy came out of nowhere. I mean, there was that one stretch of probably like 5 minutes where I was like, okay, this guy is going to be a lottery pick.
And I guess we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But that's a game where NBA scouts are looking at Chandler and thinking, wow, this kid is good. When you can just take over a game when your team needs it. Like
I'm gonna. This isn't knee jerk because I've had time to think about this. I would say. He's one of the better. He's probably the best player to come through Tennessee since Admiral and Grant.
It's been there,
I mean, I'd say he outdoes Keon Johnson, outdoes James Springer,
absolutely.
Eve. Any of them. He honestly might even outdo. I don't know about Grant, but he might outdo Admiral because he was just in terms of sheer talent.
Sheer talent, yeah.
I mean, the stuff he was doing in that 5-minute stretch, I've never seen anyone wearing orange do. I'm not even Grant. I've never seen it. He was making Hunter Dickinson look silly for them. And I don't know what happened after that, if it was just their double or what it was.
Yeah, but he's 19 years old.
Yeah.
Admiral and Grant were 21, 22 years old.
Yeah. I think it also just sucks. This is the third time Michigan's knocked out Tennessee in the last 10 years. 2011.
Yeah,
2014, and now
wasn't 2011 Michigan State?
No, it was Michigan. They blew out. That was Pearl's last year, and they blew them out by like 30.
2011 was the first round. 2014 was
the Jarnell.
To go to the Sweet 16.
Terrible. No, it wasn't the Sweet 16.
It was.
It was Sweet 16 because
it was in the Sweet to go to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, it was a terrible charge call, the flop, and then now this time.
Yeah, but before we get to the next topic, I feel like we're criminal for not discussing how sneaky good Eli Brooks was for Michigan.
The hook shot.
Because part of that stuff we were talking about at the end, how they were kind of shutting him down. I don't know if you noticed, Hunter Dickinson really wasn't doing the scoring in that last 6 minutes.
No, he wasn't.
Honestly, Michigan wasn't scoring that much in that last 6 minutes. Tennessee just wouldn't take it. But when they were, it was because, Barnes or, the coaching staff finally realized, hey, we got to put like 2 big dudes on Hunter Dickinson and stop him from scoring. They did that. They really did in the last minutes. And he's such a good passer, he just passed it out to Eli Brooks. He had a very quiet 23 points.
Yeah.
And
9 for 14.
Yeah. If he doesn't do that, Tennessee wins. If it's only Hunter Dickinson, Tennessee still probably wins. But they had that help from Brooks. They had a couple huge rebounds from Terrence Williams. He came out of nowhere. I mean, it was funny because he was one of the guys in the pregame, like on the Friday interview. It was Terrence Williams and Juwan Howard's son, Jace Howard.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, neither of these guys look like they play very much. I don't know very much about Michigan, so I was like, okay, this Terrence Williams guy, he's like a bench warmer. Yeah. He ended up being insanely important to that game.
Yeah.
So shout out to him, shout out to Eli Brooks. That was just good performance all around.
Yeah, not to keep talking on the same point, but Michigan's game plan was phenomenal, and their execution was even better. And you mentioned that Friday. I mean, the one thing that stood out to me from that day was how focused they were on Tennessee's guards. Obviously, guards win the march. But outside of Kennedy Chandler, they and specifically looking at Santiago Vescovi, they really shut him down.
Yeah.
He's 5 points, 2 for 7 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. And I know you mentioned the perimeter defense earlier. It was so good. They were not letting Tennessee get shots off at all. And when they were missing them. And, I mean, Vescovi, he drew comparisons to all these NBA players, all these big names.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. He's been guarded all year. And Rick Barnes even said other teams have guarded him harder in the past than Michigan did that game. But it worked their defense was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really took Vescovy out of the game and Tennessee shooting.
Yeah, and he wasn't especially terrific. The difference between a great guy and a good guy is when a great guy's getting shut down on scoring the ball, maybe he starts passing, starts finding looks, and Vescovy didn't really do that on Saturday.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm going to say something pretty similar to Andrew. I think a couple times he did. I think a couple times he found another guy, but Vescovy's always just been a shooter. Like he doesn't like, I forget how many assists he had, but he kept shooting the ball, and he kept shooting the ball. He goes 1 for 5, sure, but kind of like what Andrew said, if you're going to be a great player, you got to knock 2 of those down. Yeah. 2 out of 5. Even if you're being guarded like that, and he kept throwing it up, and it was obvious that Michigan was getting to him, just painfully obvious. Yeah. And really, that's been the one thing that's been able to slow him down is if you get a guard. I don't know who it was, so I'm not even going to say it for Michigan that did it. But if you get a guard that can just stay with him, that can just annoy him. Yeah, if you can,
was Diabate.
Yeah, if you can get a guy that can just annoy him, just stay with him, then I'm not saying he goes cold, but it definitely limits what he can do.
I mean, by the end of the game, he did not look like the same player. Did not have the confidence. I mean, he looked afraid to have the ball.
Yeah.
And then he afraid to take shots. Yeah. And I know with Vescovy, he's always been a shooter, and even if I'm not making them, I'm going to keep taking shots. But he did not look like the same player at all. No. By the end of the game, he was very timid, very afraid.
Yeah, I mean, back to the Barnes comment about how teams have guarded him tougher. I don't know about that. Michigan guarded him probably the best anybody had all season.
I was surprised to hear him say
because I'm sure there were teams who guarded him who did guard him well, but he didn't play that bad against them. Yeah. I wouldn't say bad, but he didn't underperform against them. And I feel like he only had like 2 open looks, and he made 1 of them. That was the second one, or the one right before half. And you could tell after that he was like, "God, finally I got open and I made one." Yeah. So I mean, they were frustrating him all night long. They would not let him just get anywhere close to being open. So that was a huge, huge factor, and it took Tennessee out of their rhythm. It did because when Vescovy makes one of those threes, it's draining for the other team, and that didn't happen. Yeah, so that to me was a huge factor in the game on Saturday.
He just couldn't string them together. That was the problem because he made that one, and then I remember he had an attempt about 2 minutes later. It wasn't the next possession, but it was about 2 or 3 minutes later. And I thought for sure, I was like, okay, if I know Vescovy, that's going in all day long.
Yeah,
and I'm not even sure it was close, that one in particular.
He had one. He had a couple that were like pretty bad.
I was like
short.
We might be in trouble here. Yeah. They might be in trouble here.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this season as a whole. And I know Ethan and we talked about this a little bit while we were up there, but season's over. You lose in the first round again. Was it a success? How do you view a successful season? Obviously, Tennessee won the SEC championship for the first time in about 4 decades, so that's something to take in consideration. But again, for the second year in a row, they won on the first weekend. Rick Barnes hadn't made the Sweet 16 since 2019, I think. So it's been a while since they've had any deep March runs. So how do you view this season in terms of was it a success, was it a failure, or was it just average, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think one of the most important things to monitor is I guess how well Michigan plays when they win the championship this year. Because they're going to. That's just what happens to Tennessee. Yeah. But I mean, being a little more serious, it really low key kind of does depend on how Michigan does to finish the season. If Michigan goes to the Final Four, I'm not sure you can really chalk it up to anything but Michigan being hot.
Yeah.
If Michigan loses, if Michigan loses next round, there's still something to hang your hat on with the SEC championship. I really do believe that, and it's hard to have that moral victory to be like, oh, we lost to the hot team. Tennessee also lost to Loyola Chicago a couple years ago. They went to the Final Four. They lost to Oregon State. They went to the Elite Eight. Tennessee just has a habit of drawing these really hot teams. Yeah. So if Michigan keeps going, I think that's what you chalk it down to. I mean, it sucks. It's a loser way to think about it, but it's just kind of how it goes because you still win the SEC championship. You beat the garbage out of Longwood. You finally have a bad shooting night after like a month. And Michigan really barely beats you because they did. I mean, the score didn't show that, but they didn't win that game until 2 minutes left. Yeah. And Tennessee led at halftime, obviously. Yeah. So, if you want to think about it like that, if you want to, I guess, appease your thoughts about this being a wasted season or something like that, I feel like you want Michigan to go far just to kind of prove that to you. Like, hey, Tennessee just lost to a good team.
Yeah. I think I'm torn because on one end, you win the SEC tournament, first time in 40-plus years. You beat 3 top 5 teams at home. You go undefeated at home. But then you get out in the first weekend of March.
Yep.
You are ultimately judged, and we all know this by your postseason play.
Yep.
If they would have made it to the second weekend, we wouldn't be talking like this.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing about it. You, like I just said, you did all that leading up to this weekend, but you can't get out of the first weekend. So, yes, obviously, it's nice. Hang a banner that you won the SEC tournament. I get that. Get a T-shirt. But you don't make it out of the first weekend. That's just where I'm so conflicted when I judge this team this year because there were so many great moments, but then you had the lowest of the low getting out of round 32. So it's just like, how do you judge this team? There's so many successes, but there's one low that you just cannot forget about, and that is obviously getting out this weekend.
Yeah. I'll take a different approach than you guys about evaluating the season because I think you can definitely evaluate it on how well the team does, and how far you go in March. But I think you can also look at just the overall success of this roster and the development of it.
Yeah,
I agree.
I don't think this roster had insane expectations. I think they matched them or exceeded them. I think you got a lot of great player development out of this season. Euros obviously develops into a starter and just an all-around pretty great big. Same with Kamwa. Brandon Hundley-Hatfield towards the end of the season started to look good. I think, and Zakai Ziegler,
obviously,
the one of the greatest stories of the season, in my opinion. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, this season is definitely a success in terms of you got guys some really great development, and I didn't even talk about Kendi Chandler and Vescovi and Josiah James, but from a roster standpoint, the season is a success. So if you judge it on that merit, I think I would call it a success. But at the end of the day, that's not the only thing you can judge it on.
I honestly agree with you. And I mean, I said all that thing about Michigan going far, but when it comes down to it, if you had to put a gun to my head and say, was this a good season for Tennessee basketball?
This is a good season.
Do they have something, to be ashamed about? I'd say no. I don't think so.
Yeah.
You go out and win the SEC championship for the first time since 1979. It doesn't matter what Michigan does. You have a banner when it comes down to it, and I get that. Like Riley said, you got to go far in the postseason. You do, and that's very true. You can have criticisms and still enjoy, the content that was put to the table. That Zakai Ziegler coming back, being just an awesome story. Euros becoming competent at basketball. Brandon Huntley-Hatfield getting better because he really he played actually pretty well against Michigan.
He did,
and just keep going on about that, and then keep thinking about next year's team. Might lose Kennedy. We'll talk about that in a minute. Might lose Kennedy. We're going to lose Fulkerson. Who are you going to lose after that?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Josiah Jordan James, possibly. I don't think so myself, but maybe. And even if you do that, you got a good roster, a starting roster with B.J. Edwards coming in, with all these. I think there's plenty of I guess, people that can score, people that can do fun things next year.
And just to talk about that SC championship for another second, that's something that Grant Admiral couldn't do, Chris Lofton didn't do, Wayne Chisholm didn't do. Who am I missing? Scotty Hodgson, J.J. Prince. I think that's such a great win. That's a tough thing to do. I think that might get discredited a little bit and lost in a second round exit, but I don't know. That really is such a great success for them.
I mean, they finally broke through on that. This was Barnes' third tournament or third SEC tournament championship getting there, and he finally won. So I mean, that's something to think about. I mean, they did win. So like you all said, there's plenty of success. There's nothing to lean your hat on. Like, this team was not a failure, but disappointing. I wouldn't say it was disappointing by the stretch of the imagination at all. Obviously, it sucks the way they lost, but there are so many highs that you can lean on, like we talked about earlier. So, in the end of the day, I do think the season was a success. It just really hurts everybody the way that it ended too early.
I'll say, this is going to be very short. I'll say it controversially. If they had lost to Longwood first round, I still think the season's a success. I really do. I mean, that sounds like loser talk, but I really do.
In a tournament that's as weird as this one has been, I mean, it's hard to judge. It's hard to judge a team based off of a second round loss to a really good Michigan team.
Yeah. I mean, look, I agree with basically everything you said because you look at everything they've done, all the accomplishments, you know, by every measure, by every metric. Yeah, it's a success. But the nature of sports, that last game is the one that matters. That's the one you remember, especially if you go out in a loss like that. And I know we're talking about the tournament and March Madness, and it's called that for a reason because anything happens.
Yeah.
But that's what sticks with people is this loss. And, again, we lose again to Michigan again, first weekend again. That's on everybody's mind. And that kind of leads into the next thing that I want to talk about is Rick Barnes, too, because, I mean, immediately the knee-jerk reaction was fire Rick Barnes. You know, he did it again. Rick Barnes in March, he can't win. I mean, we've talked about, one Final Four in his 20-plus years or whatever the numbers is. So how do you feel about Rick Barnes? Where does he stand? I think I know how we all feel, but Ethan, we'll start with you.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think it is such a simpleton reaction to say something like fire Rick Barnes or to say something like he can't win in March. Sure. Okay. If you want to do that, do that. Andy Reid is one of the best NFL coaches of all time. He didn't win a Super Bowl until the dude was daggum near 60. You know, however old he is.
Yes.
I mean, it took forever for Andy Reid to win one. When he did win that one, people are like, "Oh, greatest coach of all time." If Rick Barnes ever does that, they're gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
They're gonna switch it up so fast.
Yes.
And it's like Rick Barnes isn't out there shooting 2 of 18 for field. That one's been beat to death, so I won't even go there.
Go there.
Rick Barnes cannot control who they draw. Rick Barnes cannot control them drawing Loyola Chicago. Rick Barnes cannot control them drawing a very hot Oregon State team. Sure, he could have done better coaching. I agree. Nobody's perfect. And Michigan, Juwan Howard, put on a coaching clinic. And Rick Barnes, this entire season, has put on a coaching clinic.
Yes.
When they lose Olivier Kamwa, they should have been like a 10 seed. Tennessee should have been a 10 seed without Olivier Kamwa. They lose him. They don't have a big player. Euros is playing garbage at the time. Brandon Huntley-Hatfield is giving you nothing.
Yeah.
Fulkerson, sorry John, giving you nothing at the time.
Yeah.
You don't have a big. And he took this team to a 3 seed, should have been a 2 seed. And, beat the garbage out of Longwood, win an SEC championship. And that's your reaction? It just doesn't make any... I mean, I could go on about this for 50 minutes, but I'll cut it short there.
Yeah.
That it's just a simpleton take. It makes no sense.
I mean, where were these people when they had the huge run in February and also when they won the SEC tournament? So, I mean, like, these are the people that just, for some reason, don't like Rick Barnes. And, yes, I get the whole March thing is a fair criticism. I get that. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, like we keep on, saying, he didn't shoot the basketball. He put his players in the position to win the game. Ultimately, his players didn't perform to win the game. It just happens. That's basketball. You can't put this one on Rick Barnes. That's my whole thing about it. Another thing is, too, I want to say, do Tennessee fans and everybody else want to go through another coaching search?
Yeah, that's... I don't mean to cut you off. I was telling Josh this as we were walking back from the arena. Like, Rick Barnes, it's such a conundrum because I do hear the people that are saying, what's the point if he's not going to get far? And he has a track record of it. I'll give you that. He has a track record of not doing it. It doesn't matter. You can't get rid of that guy.
No.
Like, there's just there's no scenario where you can get rid of that guy because if you do, you go from a team competing for the second round every year. Every single year. Getting Kennedy Chandler.
Yes.
Getting Zakai Ziegler. Getting all these really fun dudes. To the 11th in the SEC? Is that what you're wanting to do? Who are you going to go get? Matt McMahon?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's what I was going to say. Like, do you really want to get rid of Barnes to start over again? Like, do you want to be a bottom feeder? Do you want to go get a Buzz Peterson, a Donnie Tyndall, and barely win SEC basketball games, get bounced, be in the bottom 4 of the SEC tournament, can barely make it to Wednesday or Thursday? I enjoy winning, I enjoy being able to win basketball games at home, undefeated at home, win 3 top 5 teams, like you said, compete for a Sweet 16 every single year. Rick Barnes is the guy. Yes, the March judgment is whatever. I get that, but starting over, that is something people shouldn't have to go through again. So
yeah, whenever Tennessee fans, whenever I see somebody on Twitter talking about firing Rick Barnes, my first question is like, would you rather have a coach that gets to tournament every year and loses?
Yes.
Or a coach that doesn't get there at all?
Yeah.
Would you rather play in the NIT?
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, I mean, it really is, like you said, a simpleton take. That's just the easiest thing to do is to just put the blame on the coach.
Yeah.
And this point has been said over and over again. Rick Barnes doesn't shoot 2 for 18 from the field or from the three, but and you also I think that discredits everything Rick Barnes has done player development wise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's taken players that shouldn't be getting any kind of NBA looks and turning them into a guy who had 13 points over the Nuggets last night in Grant Williams, and guys who are first, second round draft picks that probably shouldn't be there. So I don't know. Go ahead.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I'm not being entirely honest. Earlier in the season, Josh will remember this. We had this car ride down to Lexington. I said, I'm not sure Rick Barnes is a person that can lead Tennessee to a Final Four. And I still believe that. But I don't care even a little bit because while I'm not sure he can do that, because let's be honest here, I'm still playing devil's advocate. They had a really good team. Kennedy Chandler, he's gonna be a first round pick. You got Brendan Huntley Hatfield, who I think eventually is going to be a first round pick. Not right now.
Yeah,
but eventually.
He can get there.
You got Zakai Ziegler, amazing story. I can list names all day. And I said all the things I said earlier, and I still agree with it. I think firing him is a simpleton take, but he didn't get there. And when it comes down to it, I was right, and I still think I am right that I'm not sure he's going to get there. I'm not sure Tennessee fans should care because he gives them the best chance.
Yes.
It's just the reason I said that is because it is so hard to win in March. I'm not sure there's a handful of coaches I don't think would be able. I mean, think about it. There's 357 teams in the NCAA. 4 of them get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And so me saying that's like saying, I'm not sure some of the best can get to the Final Four. John Calipari hasn't been to the Final Four in a while.
No.
So that's not even saying it's a bad thing. I'm not sure what Tennessee fans expect. Winning this championship is probably the hardest thing to do in American sports. I really believe that.
I agree.
I mean, there are the NCAA tournament is a loser machine. There are so many teams that walk away just losers. I mean, that's the best way for it. 67 teams walk away having not won it.
Yeah.
And 63 of those teams, I guess, walk away not. 64 of those teams walk away having not gone to the Final Four. So, I mean, I almost feel like Tennessee fans' expectations are too high because a Final Four where Tennessee was 10, 15 years ago, I mean, that doesn't even register.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
It doesn't register in the mind that's even possible for Rick Barnes for Tennessee to be doing.
Yeah.
So just take with a grain of salt what Tennessee has going.
Yeah.
Here,
I think kind of going back to Coach Cal, I kind of just want to compare it to another coach. I mean, he's won 1 national championship. He's been there for, 10-plus years with all the talent that he's had. It's like we just keep on saying, winning a title, going to the Final Four in March is one of the hardest things to do ever.
So difficult to do.
So, I mean, like you said, the fact that Tennessee fans have that expectation is unheard of in Tennessee basketball history. Because, I mean, we won Elite Eight in 2010, that weird banner that's in House of Bung Arena or whatever, just a little small font chilling by itself, whatever. But the team had, obviously... This year, you could have thought this team had the potential to do it. The draw was there. Obviously, Michigan's a really hot team. Villanova, that would have been a great contest to see how they would have faced off against them since they played back in November. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. But go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, and I get it. It's frustrating. The dude gets paid $5 million a year.
It is.
That's a different conversation. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
If you want to have that conversation, go ahead. But if you want to have fun, you got to keep Rick Barnes around.
Keep him.
If you want to watch decent content on your TV, because I promise you, get rid of him.
You're
Bruce
Georgia.
I'm not even going to say Bruce Pearl because he's not good. Eric Musselman ain't walking through that door.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And we can stop comparing Rick Barnes to Coach Calipari after this. It took Coach Cal 5 first-round draft picks to win a national championship.
Yeah.
Rick Barnes has had 2.
Yeah.
Graham Williams and Kennedy Chandler.
Yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know.
It's so hard.
And it's like we keep saying it. Tennessee is one of the few Power 6 programs that hasn't really had much success. Like Elite Eight, they've been once. Final Four, they've never been. I get it.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. It's uber frustrating with the talent that Tennessee has had in the recent years. And you argue that 2019 team, they were probably going had they got the right call.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, I don't want to go into officiating because that's just a whole other
Whatever.
can of worms.
We
But
could have a
it's
whole
true.
podcast about officiating.
It's 100% true though. They could have beaten Purdue,
Yeah.
and I believe their next matchup was Virginia,
Virginia.
which I understand Virginia won the national title.
It would've
this year,
been-
they
but
were
I
not-
think Tennessee would have beaten them.
Yeah.
I really do.
That's a good.
I
that'd be a
think
good
I
game.
think Virginia matched up to their way to the
Yeah,
championship,
yeah,
and I think
so.
Tennessee was the
Yeah.
perfect matchup for them that season.
Yeah.
We can talk hypotheticals all we want. It didn't happen.
It didn't
Yeah.
happen.
But it really it doesn't matter in college basketball. You know,
Yeah.
getting to a Final Four is like a championship for most people.
Yeah.
So it's just so hard to win. I'll just end on that. We said it 1,000 times. It is so hard to win.
Yeah, and then one last point for me, and you really can't. I mean, you can't defend losing games that you should have won, but the Tennessee basketball era is very fresh and new. I mean, Tennessee has not been a team that's a contender every year
Mm-hmm.
for what it's been 4 or 5 years since Tennessee's been in that conversation kind of every year.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's tough to judge a coach who's not been here that long, and because no coach has success that fast. I mean, you can't really find many coaches in NCAA history that have come in, completely turned a program around in the matter of 3 or 4 years, and then immediately won. So
And I know I said I was done, but people said I feel like are acting like this is the last year it's going to be. Like, people are failing to realize next year's team, it's not going to be as good. Because you're not going to have Kennedy
Kennedy
Chandler.
Chandler.
Likely. We're going to hit that in a second. Likely not going to have Kennedy Chandler. But you still got a pretty good team. BJ, I've gone over it already. BJ Edwards is coming in. He's going to be, he's like the offensive version of Jemima Shack. But, you'll see next year.
Yeah.
But he's really good. Zakai is staying unless something crazy happens. You got good players. Still got Rick Barnes.
Yep.
It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. Just stop freaking out.
Yeah.
Eventually in the future, Tennessee's going to get there. I promise. Just by the law of averages, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't think sports goes by the law of averages either.
I don't
There's
know.
some teams. I am glad
St.
that-
Peter's is in the Sweet 16, so
Right.
eventually, South Carolina as a 7 seed got to a Final Four. So,
No, I am glad that we're all in agreement about Rick Barnes because I do think he is the best option for Tennessee, and I do get that as a coach, head coach of a big program like this with expectations, there is something to be said about being held responsible. But I don't think. I mean, he coached. He had a great game. I don't think he was a problem at all in this game.
It wasn't Barnes.
No. So, I understand. Yeah, he's the one, and that's the nature of a head coach is that he's got to take shots when something goes wrong. But I think, calling for his firing, 10 minutes after the game like this, that's too far.
That's so dumb. And we also need to address, it wasn't as bad as we're making it out to be. It was only probably it was maybe a 5% of people I saw on Twitter, but it should be
enough.
it should be -1%.
yeah, and I there were a lot more in January. There were a lot. in January.
Yes.
But look, I mean, just from where they came from January after starting the SEC 2 and 3, and I don't want to backtrack, but it's I don't understand it at all. Rick Barnes is clearly the guy here. So let's get into, as we've hinted at, Kennedy Chandler, because obviously he could get drafted, probably will leave and go make a bunch of money in the NBA. And I don't know, that last image of him breaking down emotional on the court. And I will say, I do want to mention Juwan Howard one more time because obviously, just from my perspective being here in Tennessee, what I knew about Juwan Howard was the fight when he, I shouldn't laugh, but it's pretty funny to watch the video.
Yeah.
And then I get into that Friday press conference that we talked about, and the very first question, somebody from the Tennessee media asks him, it was just something personal, like you had this conversation with somebody, what was that about? And the first thing Juwan Howard says was, "You don't know me very well. You must not be from Michigan because I don't talk about personal stories like that." So I know the fight, and I know that first question. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
But then after that, I mean, it was completely different. The guy, he seemed so nice and so caring, and then everything that happened with Kennedy Chandler, I was very impressed with him. I don't know what you got about that.
I came away very suspect of Greg Gard. I'm starting to think it was his fault because I agree with Josh 100%. Juwan Howard seems I mean, he seems like the nicest dude. He really does, and that's
Yeah.
not me and Josh just talking either.
Yeah.
Like that's not. You can tell it's not like him trying to save his image because it's absolutely not. The dude really looks like he.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's passionate about it, but it felt very genuine.
It did.
And when he went up to Chandler. So, anyways, I guess thoughts on Kennedy Chandler. I think we might all be in agreement too. In my eyes, that I don't think he's going to return. He's obviously got a lot of money coming his way as a top pick in the NBA.
I'll say I don't think he's going to return. I'll say that first on, but I have more confidence that he'll return than I had Jaden Springer and Keon Johnson.
Yeah, I agree.
Something you have to look at is how emotional he was. Keon and Jaden,
they were gone.
They didn't care even a little bit.
They were gone in January.
Okay, they care. Let me backtrack a little here. They care about Tennessee. They weren't crying on the court in the other coach's arms.
No, it wasn't heartbreaking for them.
It was not heartbreaking for them, losing in an arguably way worse way to Oregon State.
Yeah.
So, kind of going back to Kennedy, he cares. He really cares. It is obvious that he cares. The post-game press conference, I mean, this is bad podcasting, but he was just looking at the ground. He didn't say a word. And he said, I think he answered one question. It was because it was directed like, hey, you need to answer this question. Yeah. He didn't want to talk. He didn't want to be there. He wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So you think about that. You think about the fact that Hunter Dickinson in that game, he could have been a first-round pick last year.
Yeah.
And he came back, and he's a sophomore this season, and he's still killing it. And I don't know what his future is going to hold. I don't know if he's going to stay. I don't know if there was this unfinished business there. I don't follow Michigan, but you never know. Kennedy Chandler, it might be the same thing. I don't think it will.
Yeah.
But I'll keep going here. NIL, that wasn't a thing last season.
It is
so. He could get paid by that. I saw it. I don't know what it was, like Ruffles or something like that.
He's got Mountain Dew. I think.
Mountain Dew and I don't know what it was.
And if he came back, you got to think how many more you would get.
He'd be like the Hinda Hooker of football. He would give all the NIL.
He's got a whole bunch of this NIL money, and you got to. I don't want to give people false hope because, let's be honest, he's a very good basketball player. Yes. He could absolutely go first round. And to be honest, there's probably not much more that Tennessee could teach him. But it's up to him.
It is.
I'll leave it at that. It's up to him.
Yeah, I mean, if he ends up coming back, I wouldn't compare it to Peyton Manning, but it'd be pretty freaking close. Like, let's just be honest. Like, if he did come back, I would be shocked because I'm not saying he'd be leaving money at the table, but if I was him, I wouldn't want to do school anymore. I'm trying to make some money.
I'm not trying to do school now.
Yeah, I know.
Right? Why don't you go to the NBA next year?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. But I get the whole NIL thing is a very good argument, but he can still get so much more in the NBA. Yeah. So like I said, I just don't see him coming back. He honestly did all that he could, and he should at the end of the day realize that he did what he could. Mm-hmm. It wasn't obviously his fault that they lost. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It just didn't happen the way it did, but. He had an incredible year. He's one of the best point guards to ever come out of Tennessee in history. Let's just be honest.
I hold to it. He's probably the most talented person I've seen since Grant, and before that, maybe even Josh Richardson. I don't know.
Yeah,
that dude is uber talented.
Unreal. So he knows where he stands in Tennessee history. If you ask me, if he's going to the NBA, I don't see it any other way personally.
I agree with you.
I think that Kennedy Chandler is going to the NBA. However, I'm not as set in stone as y'all seem to be. I'm maybe 75-25, maybe even a little bit.
That's fair.
Maybe even like 80-30. Or wait, sorry, 70-30. Haven't taken a math class in a while.
Whoa.
No, and I guess like 3 reasons. One, NIL. I'm not going to talk about that as much because you already talked about it. But NIL, he can make money now. He can make good money now. Obviously not NBA money, but he can make money. 2, he's not going to be an immediate success in the NBA.
I agree with that.
Sure.
I mean, he's probably going to play in the G League, depending where he gets drafted. I mean, I think if you look at, and I think he's better than Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer.
Sure.
But if you look at Keon Johnson, Jaden Springer right now, Keon is getting a few minutes a game, maybe with the Trailblazers right now.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden Springer is getting 0 minutes with the 76ers right now.
Yeah.
I don't think Kennedy Chandler, I don't think that would be very appealing to him. I mean, I think he would rather take. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a college basketball player. I can't speak to this, but
sure.
I think if a guy like Kennedy Chandler would take success over money, if that makes sense.
I get that.
So that's
fair.
my second reasoning for him coming back is that he straight up is just not. He's an NBA talent, obviously. He's not a rookie of the year talent. He's not a starter on a good team talent yet.
He also, and this is totally nitpicking. This is NBA scout nitpicking. He's a little small.
That was going to be my other point. Yeah.
Hey, I'm 6 foot, and I don't think that's too short.
People don't realize. Like, I feel like Zakai kind of takes a little bit of that heat. But Kennedy's
Chandler's
6 foot.
2 inches taller than him.
Yeah, he's 6 feet.
Yeah.
He's strong. He's very strong.
Wingspan 6'7".
I still think it
yeah.
would be fine.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
But he's small.
But yeah, I will say a guy who is 6 foot, 170 pounds is a lot less appealing for an NBA scout than a guy who's 6'3", 200 pounds. You know.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to get drafted in the first round most likely.
Yes.
But guys are going to take I think NBA scouts would take a guy who's a little bit less talented than Chandler over that's, a little bit more athletic size-wise.
Yeah.
I think they would take a guy like that who's a little less talented over Kendi Chandler, who is, lacking a lot in size. And then my third reasoning is just maybe he loves Tennessee enough to come back.
Yeah.
And
It's
the very
possible.
real and the very real possibility that they could win a championship next year if he does come back. I
Yeah.
think maybe that's just enough to. I mean, we talked about it. He was very emotional after the game. He loves this program a lot. He loves Rick Barnes and Josiah James and Vescovi a lot. So that one's a little bit more false hope. But my third reason is just that maybe he just loves Tennessee enough to come back.
I will say I don't. When the season started, I thought it was a one and done.
Yeah.
I definitely now feel a little more iffy that he could. There is hope. There is potential that he could come back, especially now after the way it ended. Seeing him cry like that, you made a good point about Keon and Jaden. They weren't that
He just
emotional.
didn't care, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, they
Didn't.
cared, but they didn't care as much as he did.
Yeah, but
And so it is something to think about. It 100% is. And now NIL, you never know. It could potentially be that good. And, like you said it, if he wants to be the man, it's here. It's not wherever he may get drafted.
He could make 6 figures next year.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If he comes back, he is the man. Whereas if he goes to, wherever he may go next year, he's not the man anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he wouldn't rise above and, potentially be good. But like you said, G League maybe, bench minutes or ride the bench a little bit.
The
So
Jazz need to replace Mike Conley though. So.
Kind of a similar player,
Homer,
honestly.
Yeah, very similar player to Mike Conley.
Homer pick. but yeah.
I think when Rick Barnes was getting, when UCLA wanted Rick Barnes and he was thinking about re-signing his contract, and I think every restaurant in Knoxville gave him free food for life.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
very similar could happen with Kendi Chandler, where every local business in Knoxville would throw him an NIL deal and say, just please stay
one
with us for
more year. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I can see both sides of the argument because obviously we talked about NIL, but NBA money is just a lot more than that.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's
It
an
is.
NBA
At the end of the
contract.
day.
It's a professional contract, and there is always the risk of injury or something going wrong or whatever. And for him to go ahead and lock that up,
Yeah.
it is I think the smarter move maybe,
Yeah.
for him professionally, but. I have been swayed because at any point in the season, and I think even as recently as after they won the SEC tournament, I thought there was like 0 chance that he returns. But seeing the way that it ended and his emotions and hearing Rick Barnes talk about him and how much he cares and how much, he put the team first and all this,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and it's not a high chance, but I think it's like 10% chance he returns. And that's a lot more than it was like even a week ago for me.
Yeah.
And I do think there is a genuine love for Tennessee there because, I mean, nobody else is having that reaction where, I mean, I didn't see much of John Fulkerson, but I'm sure he was emotional.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
like, that was a very real, moment from Kennedy Chandler there. So I don't know. I think, like, you think about how much Hendon Hooker, how much love he's gotten now that he decided to return because he very easily could have left too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could very easily be Kennedy Chandler next year if he decides to come back. Obviously, everybody in the community, every Tennessee fan would love him. The NIL would be there. He would have the respect. But I don't think it's much. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But it is a lot better than I thought it would have been a week ago.
Yeah.
I think also, just lastly, I think it'll I've seen a lot of mock drafts, and mock drafts are not actual NBA scouts. They're guys like us. Well, I mean, I guess they're professionals. We're students.
We're professionals.
We're professionals.
Come
We're pretty professional.
Don't sell ourselves short.
I've seen Kendi Chandler all over the place. I don't know about y'all. I've seen him. This one has him at 16. I've seen him early second round. So it just depends where how well he does in the combine, how well he's scouted, and so we'll see. I guess.
I know this one I don't think is as likely, but Josiah I think could go right. He's still got another year of eligibility.
I really think that's a good point.
I want your thoughts on it. He doesn't really strike me as a person that would leave, but
the only reason I think he's going to stay is because of that. I think he's the type of person that could leave. I really think he's an NBA prospect right now.
I do.
I don't know what you guys think. I think he's really talented.
Yeah.
I mean, after this season, I still hold to it. Like, Kennedy is the most talented person on the team. Josiah is the best basketball player on the team, in my opinion. He's just got everything. Kennedy, he's a great player, but Josiah's taller. Josiah
he's got a great NBA body.
A better rebounder. He does.
Yeah.
He's more athletic.
Yeah.
Maybe not athletic. You know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's what Andrew said.
That's what you were saying, because he's 6'7", something like that. Can guard 1 through 4. Can
Long
play the
wingspan.
4 nowadays.
Yeah.
Positionless basketball.
Good shooter, wingspan. That's. I mean, everything.
fits the
Great
mold.
defense. He
Yeah.
really does. He's an all around good basketball player.
Yeah.
I think he'll get drafted. The reason I don't think he's going to go is because I just think he's a Tennessee guy.
Yeah.
I mean, through and through. And he's
through.
done 3 years. Why stop now?
Yeah.
He seems to be a guy, kind of like Josh. I think it was Josh that said it earlier, that like he cares more about winning a championship at Tennessee, doing big things at Tennessee, and then he realizes his time is coming eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. People forget, dude was a 5-star. He could have left after his first. Okay, he could.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like he had the talent, I
Yes.
guess, to leave after his first year.
Yeah.
I don't think he wouldn't have been drafted, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Like he
Yes.
could have left last year. He really could have
100%,
probably been
yeah.
drafted. It would have been late second round. Now I think it would be early second round. I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to leave.
Yeah,
I don't either.
I would put my house that he's not going to leave.
Yeah. I don't think.
I don't own a house, but
Yeah.
I would also put Andrew's house on that.
yeah, I don't think he's going to leave. I don't think a guy like Josiah James. I don't. Like I said, I'm not a college basketball player. I can't think like a college basketball player, but a guy who is having a lot of success and obviously developed a lot this year and is going to develop a lot next year.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you go to the NBA and just play for a G League team and then maybe go play overseas? You've seen it happen too much.
Yeah.
It's happened to a lot of great NBA or a lot of great Tennessee players, and is happening right now. So yeah, I don't really see a way that he leaves, and next year he's going to develop even more, and I think will be a first round pick by the end of.
Yeah, you got to think about it. Of all the guys, how many first round picks has Tennessee had in the past? I mean, how many picks has Tennessee had? Yeah, 7, 8.
A lot.
Richardson, Grant, Admiral, Bone. Even
Alexander.
get drafted.
Alexander got signed.
Alexander got signed.
Bowden.
Tobias.
Yeah, he got signed. Okay, so we're gonna name like 10 people.
Yeah.
Okay?
10 guys who are
We got
NBA.
3 of them that are
Three of them
right
are playing
now.
NBA right now.
Tobias, Josh
Josh,
Richardson,
Grant.
and Grant Williams.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
Admiral's back and forth. Yeah.
Kinda. I
G
don't
League,
think
yeah.
Admiral's gonna stick personally. It
Yeah.
sucks, but I don't think Admiral's gonna stick
Yeah.
there. Jordan Bone's done.
He's overseas. So is Kyle.
Both.
Yeah.
Both Springer and Johnson, they're going to be done within a year.
Yeah.
I think they needed a little more, but they
I think
just didn't
Springer.
fit in the NFL.
Yeah, I
and
think
the
Springer
NBA.
would have.
Yeah.
I think Springer would have. I mean, we don't have to talk about this. Springer would have benefited so much with one more year of Tennessee.
Both of them would have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we don't need to get into the economics of the NBA, but the money is very attractive.
The money is there. Yeah.
and that's well, I'll touch on it a little bit. That's why, bringing things full circle, that's why it might be a little different this year. This is the first year NIL has been a thing.
Yeah.
We might see players just staying this year.
Yeah.
The NIL really low-key might have been terrible for the NBA. Or maybe a good thing, because
You never know.
it's terrible for the G League. Let's
G
say
League,
that.
yeah, G League, yes,
It
yeah.
could be, because you're gonna have a lot less people leaving. It's
Yes.
gonna be full of John Fulkerson. Sorry,
Yeah.
Fulky. but
Yeah, I mean, just to hit on Josiah again, obviously it's been talked about all year, but he has just been an incredible leader for this team. And I think that there is something to that, just the way he's not necessarily been the most consistent player. He has been great all year, but just that consistent leadership presence, that veteran presence when, things were not great in January, and just how far he's come, and even as much as sticking up for Kennedy Chandler,
That was cool.
Yeah, like obviously that question has to be asked.
It
I
does,
don't think it was a bad question or anything, but
This is bad podcasting. It was the question of will Kennedy stay?
yeah.
We didn't say that.
And
Keep
again,
going.
has to be asked. When are you going to see Kennedy Chandler again? Maybe not again in that kind of format. But just to see Josiah you stick up for C-Man. And I mean, it was obvious. Like they probably had something before you come in there. If they ask you, don't worry about it. I got you. Like it's stuff like that makes me think, yeah, he's definitely coming back.
Team cares a lot.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they've said it all year, but I don't think it was just talking out of their head, talking out of their ears. They really do care about each other a lot, and you could tell it was sad that they realized that it was, kind of over with. But only one of the guys has to leave. Folkers is the only guy that has to leave. That's the thing that you got to think. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Brock Jansen, but you're right. He's transferring. Actually, good for Brock Jansen.
I cannot wait to see
what he does.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I think he's actually going to be pretty decent.
I do too.
I really do. In the minutes he played this season, I was like, okay, he's not great. I get it. He's not awful. He really wasn't.
He's not.
He was like when they'd put the the white guys, the end game guys in those last 2 minutes. Brock Dancic was automatic. He scored it every single time.
I can't remember the player's name, but Texas A&M had the guy with the long hair and the beard, and he was definitely way worse than Brock Jansen.
Than Brock Jansen was.
I legitimately think Brock Jansen will do well against. In a
wherever he goes,
league.
yes,
in a smaller league, I think. Now, don't go to Miami. Don't go in the ACC.
Yeah.
Don't go in something like that. But if he goes to East Carolina with Mike Schwartz, if he does like a Georgia State, if he does something like that,
he'll be good.
Kent Gilbert, by the way, he's going to leave with Mike Schwartz. There's no way he's not.
Who?
Kent Gilbert.
Oh.
The walk-on. He's absolutely going to leave with Mike Schwartz. That's just my hot take. I don't know if that for sure. I don't have any insider information, but I think it's interesting too.
Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to fault you for that.
No one, Someone hold me to it.
Not leaving.
He's not leaving.
9:47, March 21st. We're gonna hold that.
How are we doing on time? 52 minutes. I do want to touch on the Lady Vols just a bit. Shout them out. They won their first tournament game against Buffalo. You were there. Quick takeaways, quick impressions from that before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo was going to be a tough team no matter who they played. Daisha Fair, I think that's how you say her first name. She was incredible. A walking bucket. So they're going to be tough to guard. And it was evidence first half. They're down by 5, but second half, Tennessee did take over. Talon did take over, won by 13. So, but Belmont tonight is going to be a tough game. They came back, beat Oregon in double overtime. The crowd should be good. I mean, coming from Nashville over, Knoxville should be packed out. So
free tickets for students. I guess this isn't going to get published before.
Yeah. I was about to say that's the reason we didn't talk about the Lady Vols that much. That we're not sexist. It's just
it's not gonna be
the game is going to happen before we publish this.
With 4 people as technologically illiterate
as we are,
editing something like this,
it's going to take forever.
Putting it up and just a quick turnaround is tough.
Yeah. So if Tennessee loses tonight,
but we'll do a deep dive. We'll do a deep dive.
After that, we'll do Lady Vols, but but tonight should be a fun one.
Yeah. Buffalo. I mean, great 13 seed. Very should have been seeded.
Very underseeded. Yes,
lower.
Yeah,
they were a great team. Daisha Fair.
Yeah,
I don't know. She's great. She could transfer to an SEC team and be a starter. But they played a great game on Saturday. Saturday. And gave Tennessee a run for their money for sure. And tonight's not going to be easy either. Obviously, Belmont's a better draw than having to play Oregon.
Sure.
But Tennessee could go to Sweet 16 tonight, but it wouldn't be a shocker if they didn't.
Belmont last year made Sweet 16 the bubble, so they've got experience. They're a very, very tough team, but tonight should be a fun one. Ray Burrell, everybody else in company, should be a fun one.
Also, just real quick, we can talk about this once we do the deep dive into the Lady Vols season, but a Sweet 16 with 2 of your best players injured is pretty...
That's pretty impressive.
Not half bad.
If they can do
it. If they can do it.
And like you said, having Belmont instead of Oregon, yes, Belmont obviously just won. But when you look on paper, not as hard as Oregon.
Who would it be after Belmont if they
It'd
do
be
that?
Louisville.
Louisville, that's not
Tough
great.
team.
No,
tough
yeah,
team.
one
great.
seed.
And that's not going to be in Knoxville at that point.
No, it'll be in Wichita.
That's
yeah.
really not great.
Yeah.
If you were,
So,
Yeah.
but like you just said though, getting the Sweet 16 with Kean Green and Jordan Horson out, and a lot of other injuries to start the season,
Yeah.
highly impressive.
Any update on Jordan Horson now that you mention it?
It's they said she can condition, but
She's not gonna be back.
it's going to be so hard for her to get back
Yeah.
at 8
If they make
this
the Final
season.
Four, maybe.
make her play with her offhand against Louisville. that's
Yeah.
what
I
I'd
mean,
say.
she can throw passes.
She's probably not bad with her eye.
I mean, it's good that it is indeed not her shooting hand.
Okay.
So I mean, she can
Bro, I'm telling you.
yeah.
One-handed.
So just shoot one handed, but it's
Tell her you're not allowed to shoot the ball except for layups.
a
So go
layups.
out
I
there.
will be shocked if she does
No,
end up coming
she's
back.
Not,
Yeah.
She's not going to.
So there's not really much of an update.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. UTDailybeacon.com will have it all. I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Yep.